Howdy, folks. Welcome back to Super Koopa TV. Thought I would browse some headlines from Bounding into Comics today, one of my favorite entertainment news sites. This probably isn't going to be a video for everybody, but I just like to just talk about what's going on. And I like Bounding into Comics because they tend to address a lot of the wokeness in today's entertainment and really kind of dismantle it. I'm not going to read these full articles, but I'm going to look at some of the headlines for today and sort of discuss my thoughts on some of these things that are coming out. So we've got two newer ones here. The first one is Blue Beetle director deletes tweet wishing assassination on President Donald Trump. Claims Puerto Rico is a slave colony. Now this guy's been going around recently making the rounds because I believe it was Geeks and Gamers did a stream reacting to the Blue Beetle, and Ryan Kinnell went off on a rant at the end talking about the last line from George Lopez, which was Batman is a fascist, and talking about how ridiculously pandering that line was. And so this guy ended up responding and just saying, I can't believe you guys are so triggered over this, which I don't understand why people think that somebody responding to it passionately is triggered. They're not angry. They're frustrated at the fact that you seem to think that by constantly doing this, undermining characters, swapping them out for wokeness and belittling fan favorites the way that you're doing, because that is what that line does. You know, I guess the greater context of the character is he's sort of a wacky conspiracy theorist of sorts, the George Lopez character, but they don't portray it in that light or in that sense in the trailer, so it just comes across as mean-spirited towards your own universe. So when people respond to it, they're like, oh yeah, I'm just trolling you guys, and you guys fell for the bait, and blah, blah, blah. It's like, but these people actually feel that way. And then you get headlines like this where people dig through his tweets and they find out he wishes that Donald Trump would die like Lincoln. I mean, that's not the mark of a good individual. I don't care what your political persuasion is. If you talk like this about somebody, I tend to not want to be around you. This is just horribly mean-spirited. I've said all sorts of, I said, oh, well, I think Biden's a fool and that sort of thing, but I've never once said I think he should be Lincolned. That's just evil. And then we're moving on to the next headline here, which says Sony Pictures promotes child mutilation in latest trailer for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse with, I'll let you read that out here. Protect the kids flag. Protect certain kids flag. This is just tiring. The first movie was a little bit ideological, but not enough to where it wasn't entertaining. I believe a friend of mine was telling me how great they felt the first movie was, but as is predictable with this being Sony, they're going the woke route, and this is just a small example of it, and I think people are going, well, what else is going to be in there? Because there's going to be other stuff. It's just tiring because not everybody agrees with this stuff. Not everybody thinks that this is the grandiose cause that they want it to be, and they're basically trying to say, well, too bad. This is the battle that we think the world needs to fight. It's like a majority of your paying customers either don't care about this or are against this. So why are you pandering to groups of people who are in the minority in this thought process? It doesn't make any sense from a money-making standpoint, but it seems like Hollywood just doesn't care about monetary investment. Because if they did, they would make things just purely for entertainment and leave that stuff out. And I always like to use the example, if this was a different flag for a different ideology that wokeists don't like, they would be demanded it being taken down. I don't think anybody's going to demand it being taken down. I think most people are going to roll their eyes and not see the movie. That's what I'm going to do, because I didn't see the first one because of superhero burnout, and I'm not interested in seeing this one. I don't like Miles Morales as a character. I did it first, but then I started to kind of dig into what he was and realized, wait a second, this isn't a good original take on Spider-Man. This is just woke nonsense. This is just, let's elevate a race or an ethnicity above other people. In his case, let's elevate blacks and Latinos above white people. I'm not using Latinx. That's such a stupid phrase. And it's an offensive phrase to Latino people. Unbelievable. So, I'm not surprised by that. It's just, that's more tiring than anything. I'm not going to go see it anyway, but It's just a roll your eye moment at, this keeps happening when this movie doesn't need this sort of thing. It's going to do gangbusters no matter what it does, so they probably figured let's throw in as much as we can, but by doing that they're actively closing the door on some people, and they'll say that's okay because you're istophobic, so you shouldn't be seeing this movie anyway. I don't. The directors will say I don't want you to watch this movie because you're against my beliefs. I'd be, as a Christian, I don't care if an atheist comes to see a Christian movie, even if they do just to lambast it. It's their choice. I'm not trying to close the door to them. And Christian movies aren't made to close the door to anybody. They're made to just put a message out there and see who receives it. The problem is that these people put the message out, and if it's received well, they have no problem. But if it's received poorly, then they start to bully people, which is exactly what they do all the time. So it's a shame. And then you got Blue Beetle actress Susan Sarandon reveals her character is, quote, the white military industrial complex bad guy. Like, we haven't seen that for years on end. That's just a dated trope. I mean, that's the least of the Blue Beetle movie's problems, and it's got a lot of them. Visually, it just looks bad, and the way the director is responding to things is just bad, and it's just, why are they making a Blue Beetle movie? They should have started with an animated thing like Spider-Man, and then, you know, why are they making a live action Blue Beetle? That's a character that to me doesn't work for live action. That's a character that works better for a cartoon. But it is what it is. He was in Young Justice, I believe. And then you got the fallout from the Disney investor call yesterday, which was just a spectacular dumpster fire. Disney CEO Bob Iger confirms company will continue to get involved in politics, compares grooming young children with gender identity and sexual orientation to civil rights and the Holocaust. Yes, he actually did everything this says. When somebody asked him about wokeness in Disney, he responded basically saying that it's corporations' responsibilities to take a moral stance on these issues. And he compared the moral issues of today to the Holocaust and civil rights. So he compared people getting actually physically hurt and systematically beaten in the streets and thrown in gas chambers to people having an alternative lifestyle and not being fully accepted by their communities. I mean, how do you even do that? I'm surprised he was able to even draw that comparison. But I think I was watching Valiant Renegade did a stream on it, and they couldn't believe it. They were laughing it up. They're like, this is basically just giving Universal the win in terms of theme parks and in terms of films with Mario. Even though I'm not too excited about Mario myself, to be honest. I've been very back and forth about it. But you're giving them a win because you're saying, well, all we care about is ideology. And that's all we're going to do. These other companies aren't being as brazen with it, except for maybe Sony and Warner Brothers. But Paramount and Sony, or yeah, Paramount and Universal seem to be the ones who are trying to more tactfully go about the way they talk about ideology. Not that it means much, but they're taking a much better approach to it than Disney, which they're just going full tilt into it. They're all the same. Disney's just the most outspoken and the most gung ho about it. Occasionally, a project will sneak through the cracks that isn't woke through Paramount or Universal. But with Disney, it's just all woke. It's all woke nonsense. And Iger is just confirming with his reinstatement as CEO. He's just confirming that that's what the company is. And people they're drawing a line in the sand, saying if you don't stand for any of these things, then don't consume our products. And people are going, yeah, okay. There's alternatives, so okay. And then they scramble and they fire 7,000 people. So clearly it's not working, but they're going to do it anyway because the heck with making money, I guess. We're okay losing billions of dollars as long as we tell people what we think they need to hear. It doesn't make any sense to me. It genuinely doesn't make any sense to me, but it's their company. They can do whatever they want. It's a private company. They can do whatever they want. Exactly. Although it'll be interesting to see what happens with this whole Reedy Creek situation. I don't know where that's going to land. DC outed for sneakily deleting tweet reducing Tim Drake to internet scrolling bisexual. They tried to do a meme post with Tim Drake, and they made him into a stereotype as a result, and they quickly panicked on that. But they didn't. It took them, I think, a few days to actually sort of recant on that. They didn't apologize for it, but it's just hilarious to me. They reduced him down to they reduced a lot of characters down to a stereotype in doing that, and That's, I don't know. It's like, where is the learning process that these companies need to go through where you want to appeal to as many people as possible without elevating some and lowering others? You can very easily do that. Just make your characters relatable on a basic level. They don't have to be a certain race, they don't have to be a certain sexuality, they don't have to be a certain gender. They just have to be relatable. That's all the audience member cares about. And that takes good writing to do. And apparently they don't have that anymore. That's all your general audience member wants, is for them to be at least baseline relatable. That's what will keep them watching. If they're relatable and the story is good, that's what will keep their interest. This other stuff takes people out of it and makes people not want to watch. Oh, this is interesting. I didn't see this one when I tried to record this earlier. EA lays off 6% of its staff. Quote, "We are moving away from projects that do not contribute to our strategy." And that strategy, I'm assuming, is microtransactions out the wazoo. Electronic Arts is a terrible company. They haven't been good for years, if ever. They've produced good games in the past because they've gotten good developers, but their philosophy of business is just nickel and dime the customers as much as possible. Give them as little as possible and then nickel and dime them. Their sports franchises are just based off of slot machines, basically. They've been in and out of court with several countries about it. They're just a terrible gaming company. They're one of the worst out there. I don't think they are the worst, but I think they're one of the worst. Their last Madden outing was a disaster. Them, 2K, Activision Blizzard, a lot of these Western developments that insist on games as a service are just terrible. They treat their employees terrible. They run their games terrible. And I've stopped buying a majority of their games. I haven't bought Call of Duty in years. Good riddance, I say, because those games they've only gotten worse. And I know everybody's hyped about Diablo and all of that, but I can't be, because Activision Blizzard's just a terrible company. They're as predatory as it gets with microtransactions. I heard something recently about people being upset that there's going to be that sort of monetization scheme, and I'm like, what the heck are people expecting? They get all hyped because of, oh, new Diablo, and it's like, why? You understand what they're going to do with this thing, right? Like, they haven't changed as a company just because you're excited about a new thing. They're still Activision Blizzard. They still have this core business model that they're adhering to, no matter if they were sold to Microsoft or not. I don't understand how people get themselves into that mindset and they ignore all the stuff that's gone on. Even the more controversial stuff that's gone on Blizzard just went out the window when they announced, or when they released the beta for Diablo 4. Oh, I gotta play it. That's a part of gaming I can't stand. I don't get it. Doctor Sleep director rumor. Doctor Sleep director Mike Flanagan pitched Warner DC on a Clayface movie. That actually could have been interesting. I don't know how easily you would have been able to do that without Batman, but Clayface being a shape-shifting actor, as he was portrayed in Batman the Animated Series, would have been at least somewhat fascinating. I think you could get multiple actors and actresses, because he could shapeshift into pretty much anything. That would have been cool. That would have been really cool. I think that's it for today's headlines. Yeah, some of these are from yesterday. Deadpool 3 shoots itself in the foot, taps Marvel Comics and She-Hulk attorney-at-law writer Zeb Wells to co-write script. Yeah, that's a mistake. She-Hulk was one of the worst things they ever did. It was painfully cringy and embarrassing. It was fun for a lot of people to cover, but it was painfully cringy and embarrassing. It was not a good outing, and it was not faithful to the character in the comics whatsoever. She was just, that whole thing was a vehicle for ideology since day one, and it just was very blatant about it. So as far as entertainment factor is concerned, it just was not there. And a lot of those people are making Daredevil and apparently now Deadpool, which means they're probably going to neuter Deadpool, which the thing people like about Deadpool is that he's not under any circumstances politically correct. So there's a fine line they're walking there. So I don't much care for the Deadpool movies because I've seen enough of the character in the comics and in some games, and I wasn't interested in seeing a movie. He's a little over the top for me. He's a little overplayed for me, but I think he's a good character when he's used right, but this clearly isn't using him right. Dragon Quest series chief producer, I can't pronounce that, so I'm just going to say R.I., resigns from Square Enix after 22 years. And in the article, I've read the article earlier, he basically said, he's 47 and he wants to start thinking about other things. And I mean, best of luck to the guy because, I don't know what is going on in his life, but I mean, age plays a factor in terms of your career decisions and in terms of what you want to do with your life. You don't have forever on this earth, and time moves just like that. You start to realize that when you look at what age you actually are. I mean, I can't believe I'm about to turn 31. I almost don't know what to do with myself with it. My 20s, just realizing my 20s have been here and gone, and they've been very uneventful. Is just I've had a hard time coming to grips with it in some points, but I mean, it is what it is. I mean, that your life is what it is. But at some point, when you're doing the same thing over and over again, even if you enjoy it, you start to think, wait a second, maybe I want to try something new before I just can't do anything anymore. Because there gets to be a point where whatever you're doing with your work, you just can't do physically or mentally anymore because your body's not able to handle it. So I completely understand that, but I also have to wonder if a lot of this has to do with the direction that Square Enix said that they were going to go, and if that was just off-putting to him, because the direction Square Enix wants to go is in a more, quote, modern audience direction, which is basically catering to Western sensibilities, and that's not why Westerners who enjoy Square Enix games play Square Enix games. They enjoy them because they like the stories, the characters, the settings as they are, and as they're imagined within that framework. They don't want something. Square Enix tried to pander to Western audiences by buying Eidos Montreal and a couple other Western studios, and they ran them into the ground. I mean, the last projects they had under those teams were something like Avengers, and that was an awful, just microtransaction laden failure. It was absolutely horrible. So I can't help but wonder if that factors into this guy leaving after 22 years. I mean, he basically said he applied at the height of Dragon Quest. He was involved with one of my favorite Dragon Quests of all time, Dragon Quest VIII, and he said he was hired on the Year of the Dragon. He signed up on the Year of the Dragon, and just he felt like everything lined up into place for him to be a part of that, and he was a part of it for 22 years. So it was very hard for him to leave because he was going through his things. He found his original resume. It's a really compelling story. In fact, I might link it down in the description because it's really heartfelt. He's very heartfelt about his position there, and I wish the best of luck to the guy because he sounds like a great guy, and I should thank him for being involved in one of the greatest JRPGs I've ever played in Dragon Quest VIII and some of the subsequent ones because those are fantastic. I mean, where Final Fantasy has kind of abandoned its roots, Dragon Quest has only embraced it and made better games with it. Dragon Quest 11, in some ways, it's better than 8. They just keep getting better, and I'm actually excited for 12. If 12 is a disappointment because of Square Enix direction, I don't know, and I don't know how this is going to affect 12 because they announced 12. Is it 12 or 13, or is 12 the online one? I don't know. One of them's I think 10's the online one. Because 9 is Sentinels of the Starry Skies. 8 is Journey of the Cursed King. 7 is... I forget the subtext to 7. Journeys of a Lost something or other. Because I have 7 on the 3DS. 6, I don't remember what 6 is called either. And then 5 is decent. Most of those Dragon Quest games are fantastic. I have the first 3, 7, 8... and 11, and 9. I have 9 as well. They're all really good games, so best of luck to that guy, seriously. He's done tremendous work. Desperation, Disney to create live-action version of 2016 animated film Moana with Dwayne Johnson. You want to talk about the most unnecessary waste of money? Why are you remaking what is considered a classic? If anything, they should just be making a sequel. This is where Disney's decision making baffles me. They're already billions of dollars in the hole, and instead of making sensible business decisions, they decide they're going to spend more money doing this live action thing that has been failing in a movie that's it's not even a decade old yet. I don't understand that whatsoever, and I didn't get on the whole Moana thing. I don't care. But this doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense to me at all. I don't get it. I just don't understand it. It doesn't come across as a wise decision, and it's not that people won't go see it, but people, I think even kids are going to go, well, I've already got Moana at home. This is that meme of, Mom, can I have Moana? Well, we've got Moana at home. Moana at home is the, the original. So it's kind of the inverse of that meme, actually. But regardless, this is completely unnecessary. This is just a waste of money. Because odds are, if it's not even remotely as good as the original, which it's most likely not going to be because these live action ones tend to not, you've just wasted several $100 million. This is desperate. Like I said, it's pure desperation. There's not a lot of creativity behind this other than, can we insert more ideology into this? There's no reason for it, none at all. All right, next one. James Gunn explains why superhero fatigue exists. If it becomes just a bunch of nonsense on screen, it gets really boring. He's half right about that. I mean, he's absolutely half right about that. You need a compelling reason to sit down. If you're going to be paying the prices that the theaters want, especially not even counting your convenience snacks and all of that. I'm not even talking about the people who sneak stuff in. But if you're willing to pay everything at face value, it gets expensive. And if you don't like a movie, you want to walk out of a movie, you want to make sure it's going to keep your butt in the seat. So you can't just have a whole bunch of action on screen and think that that's okay. If the action isn't good, if it looks bad visually, it's going to suck. If the story isn't compelling or accurate to its source material, it's not compelling. The reason that the original phases of Marvel worked was because they built their stories. They weren't entirely accurate to the comics, but there's a very good argument that they didn't need to be. They were close enough and respectful enough to where you bought that Robert Downey Jr. was Tony Stark. Like, beat for beat, you got that he was the same as the one in the comics. But they just took the story in a believable direction, in a compelling direction, and it all led to Avengers and another Avengers and another Avengers, and then their independent stories in between. And they carefully crafted this thing, and now that they finally completed it, they don't really seem to know where to go. With Marvel anyway. But with DC, a lot of people are worried that James Gunn is just going to make it purely ideological. And I think that's a safe I think that's a safe bet. I know people say, well, he didn't do that with Guardians of the Galaxy from what we know. I'm like, yeah, but Warner's going to be like, there's going to be people at Warner who are going to be, kind of pulling his puppet strings a little bit, saying this is what needs to happen. Like all these rumors of a black Superman, which, gosh, I hope they don't do. What a disrespect to that character, honestly. Just create a new hero at that point. What a disrespect. Okay, then there's this one. This will probably be the last headline that I read for this video. Teen disqualified from Pokemon TCG tournament after nervously laughing when asked for pronouns. Opens up. I hadn't had suicidal thoughts in a while until this event. Oh my gosh. I didn't read this. Oh my goodness. After nervously asking when asking his pronouns by a non-binary judge, 17-year-old player Maniki Tran was disqualified in a regional Pokemon TCG tournament. Tran would go on to disclose that he had been disqualified by a head judge and escorted out of the venue. He opens up explaining going up against a very well-known player, a very skilled player, made him nervous along with being on stream and in front of such a large crowd for only the third time. So what happened was when he was asked to respond to this, he laughed. That judge took that as some sort of phobia and asked him to leave and basically escorted him out. And now the kid is saying he has Now the kid is saying he has suicidal thoughts because he was unfairly removed from this tournament. If somebody doesn't go to Nintendo and right this wrong and tell them, or to the Pokemon Company or whoever's involved in sanctioning these tournaments and right this wrong, I'm going to be pissed. This is the type of stuff that gets under my collar. These adults who are supposed to be mature are bullying these children who are already under pressure because they're in a freaking competition. And they're kicking them out of tournaments because they perceive them to be estophobic. Gosh, dang it. This kind of stuff makes me angry. I hope that judge is never allowed at a tournament again. I don't even care. How do you treat kids like that? It's one thing if the kids are being a jerk and breaking the rules. But if you're so weak that you can't even perceive that correctly, and then you see the effect that it has, he's got GoFundMe to replace his expenses to travel there. Because it cost him, look, he had to pay over $1,000 to go. I'm so angry. This one story made me so angry. How can they treat a kid like this? This is a good comment. The sad part about this is how they go after the truly good and compassionate people, making them feel like monsters, which will only lower the amount of kindness and compassion that people will show in the long run. It affects society badly. I love this quote because there was somebody trying to defend it. Please don't bully the people who enforce unjust bullying and conformity on every level of social interaction and find no emotional qualms whatsoever about attempting to destroy an adolescent's life for the sake of justifying their religious dogmatism. Yeah, F that and F the judges. No kid in any space should ever be asked for their, quote, pronouns, and no adult running a competition for kids should ever put their own precious identity feelings above the enjoyment and fun of the kids. Amen to that. Eric Travis made that comment. Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. This whole situation makes me mad. These are supposed to be adults, and they're bullying children who paid to be a part of a competition, who didn't break any rules. I'm gonna lose my mind at this sort of thing. That's gonna have to be the one that I wrap up on because we're getting closer to 30 minutes. But a lot of these other headlines are eye rolling, but that one makes me visibly angry because this is a kid. You only are a kid once, and you're supposed to be in a place where, as long as you follow the rules, which he was doing, you're fine. But because he had a nervous reaction to a question that was completely out of left field, because he was already nervous because he was going up against a high-level player, and this child of an adult decides they're going to bully him and then play the victim, screw them. That just makes me sick to my stomach. These are not good people who do this. I don't care what your ideology is. You don't treat people that way. You don't do that to kids. Anyways, I'm going to end it on that note before I get too upset. Overall, most of the news sucks and is passable, but a lot of interesting stuff. The EA thing is interesting. The Disney stuff, they'll never learn. They'll lose billions of dollars. They're not going to go out of business tomorrow. I know a lot of people think that, but they're not going to go out of business tomorrow. They're just going to slowly bleed their support dry. It's just stupid. It'll be interesting to see what James Gunn does. Blue Beetle's going to suck. This Moana thing is going to suck. Disney's not learning anything. And that's just kind of where we're at. So thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. This has been Super Koopa TV. I will see you guys next time. God bless. Have a good one. May God help us all.